All right, Ted Thomas didn't pay his tax. Is there anybody out there that wants to pay the Ted Thomas tax?
Thank you for joining us. Again, this is Ted Thomas, America's Tax Lien and Tax Deed Authority. We've covered this topic a lot before, but I want to scratch a little bit below the surface today on this. Why don't you first explain briefly to everybody, what is a tax lien certificate? What is that?
Okay, all right. So in the United States, if you own a property, you have to pay a property tax. Now, the property tax is very low tax. Some states like New York and California, they're quite high, but most of the states, it's just a minor tax, but it's a part of the value of the property. So if the property had $100,000 value, it would have a tax at $100,000. If it had $500,000, it would have a tax at that. So every property has an actual appraisal done or assessment by the local county, and so everybody has to do that. The legislature of the state said everybody's got to pay the tax. All right, so that tax is issued once a year by the local treasurer and tax collector, and when they issue that tax, people pay it. Now, I'm going to tell you 95, 97% of the people just pay the tax, but there's going to be a small percentage of the people that don't pay the tax. Now, that small percentage that doesn't pay the tax, now the county doesn't have enough money to pay their bills, because property tax is what pays the money that comes in, the revenue that comes in pays the bills. All right, so the county can't collect, it doesn't have the money, and they haven't collected the tax. So what they're going to do is they're going to put the property in default. So think about a big default notice being pushed on the front door. It says, you're in default, you have to pay your tax. Now, if you don't pay the tax, the county is going to do something about it. There's going to be a consequence. And the consequence is that they're going to come and they're going to actually push you off of that property. They're going to push you off the property and they're going to confiscate it. They're going to take the property away from you. But in half of the states, they're very benevolent. Now, the benevolent's my word. That's not part of the law. The benevolent states say, oh, no, we're not going to push those people out of the house. We're going to sell a tax lien certificate. You said, the heck is a tax lien certificate? All right, Ted Thomas didn't pay his tax. Is there anybody out there that wants to pay the Ted Thomas tax? And so they announced that on their website, that they're going to have a tax certificate auction. And then they announce it in the newspaper. And then they start selling pieces of paper, which are called tax lien certificates, just a piece of paper. So anybody can go in and raise their hand up. I want to buy Ted's certificate. I want to buy it. So what that person does is they pay my taxes. So then now they're paying their taxes. So the county's happy. All right, then they own the certificate. Now, you can't go forever not paying the tax. So in most states, they give them about 3 years in that delinquency situation. All right, so those people, so if I don't pay the tax for that 3 years, well, it keeps accruing, it keeps adding up. But anytime I want, I can come in and pay the tax. That's called a redemption, not like in the church, but a redemption of money. So I could go in and pay the tax. All right, so these tax lien certificates are sold in bulk. I mean, there's a lot of them. I mean, I've gone to auctions in, say, Miami-Dade. They have 65,000 tax certificates. Florida, as a state, might have 1 million certificates. They'll have 1 million certificates in 1 year. A place like Arizona, Phoenix, a place like that, 20 or 30,000 certificates, and they all pay 16%. So all the states that sell tax lien certificates, about half of them do that, have a high percentage rate. So anybody can buy one of those certificates. You can't give the money to me. You give the money to the government. The government holds the money and pays bills. And then when the people come in and pay, you get paid. So that's kind of a lengthy discussion, but that's what a tax certificate is.
So it's kind of neat. I pay off this guy's taxes. Whatever I invested in paying off his taxes, I'm getting sort of a guaranteed percentage back. Here's a question, though, Ted. I bet you get this a lot. If I own this tax, am I going to be responsible for the delinquent property taxes while I'm holding the tax lien certificate?
That's a really good question. You're not responsible for it, but would you want to pay it? Yes, you would want to pay it, because the more money you put into this thing, the more money you're going to get in return, because you're buying the certificate not for the sense of buying something. You're buying it to earn a high interest rate. So in a place like Phoenix, they'll have 16% interest. A place like Illinois, 36% interest. A place like Iowa, 24%. So you're getting the idea. So you would want to buy. They will ask you when you buy the first certificate, do you want to pay next year's? Absolutely. In other words, it's an investment. That's why you're doing it. I mean, the banks have recently been paying 1 or 2%. If you can earn 16% in Arizona, 16 is a lot more than 2%. Getting the idea.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, another question here. If I hold a tax certificate for a year or so on property with tenants that, and I think these tenants aren't really responsible, can I buy insurance on the for the property?
On a tax defaulted property, they haven't pushed the people off the property. The people are still in the property. They're in default. They're still in the property. You have no rights in that property. You only have rights to this piece of paper. You have rights to get paid on a piece of paper. You have an IOU from the county. County is saying, we'll pay you on the certificate. If we don't pay you, we'll give you that property that guy didn't pay. The county's saying that, put it right in the certificate. The covenant, the promise from the county is that if you don't get paid, you get the property. What's wrong with that?
Well, let me ask you, because that sounds pretty good. So what are my tax lien investing risks? What risk are there with investing in a tax lien?
The risk is, and a lot of people take this risk, the risk is you didn't look at the property. What if the property was a falling down shack in the ghetto? You don't want to buy that because you might get it. Do you want a falling down property in the ghetto? No. The risk is you didn't get off your rusty dusty and go check that property and make sure that it was worthwhile. I mean, obviously, if I want to buy a tax certificate, I want to buy all I want in the country club. Why do I want in the country club? Because if they don't pay me, I'll get a property in the country club. Hello? I'd love to have a property in the country club, right? Yeah. So the risk is you didn't look at the property. That's the biggest risk.
Okay.
And then there's other risks that, what if somebody went bankrupt? Well, if they go bankrupt, then it's going to get tied up in the bankruptcy court. But you're not going to lose your money because, believe me, the judge is getting paid by the tax people. So bankruptcy really is unsecured debt. And so what we're talking about here is you have secured debt. You see, a tax certificate is secured. It's attached to the property. So think of it. This is the wall in the property, and the tax lien is holding on to the wall. Now, folks, I'm not an attorney. I'm not a broker. I'm not a CPA. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just an investor, and that's where my information comes. So I'm not giving you legal advice. I'm not telling you what to buy, what not to buy. But if I can make 16% on a certificate compared to 2% of the bank, that's an easy decision for me. I hope it is for you.
Hey, one more question, Ted. So, okay, the property owner doesn't pay their back taxes, and I've got the tax lien certificate. I get the property. But I heard that in some counties, if a tax lien does not get paid, the deed goes into tax lien foreclosure auction. If that's true, what counties, what states does this happen in?
That's an excellent question, and only the people in the state of Florida will know that. That's the only state that applies to. All right, so in the United States as a whole, if you buy a tax certificate, it'll more than likely run about 3 years. At the end of 3 years, if you're not paid, you'll have to do a foreclosure and take the property, okay? And the government's going to make sure that that works out. In Florida, they're always trying to protect people in Florida. Florida's a very conservative state. So Florida first says, we're going to set, you can buy a tax certificate, but it's only for 2 years. At the end of 2 years, if you hold this certificate and the people haven't paid you, then you have to call the county on the phone and say, look, I still got, they haven't paid me. So the county says, okay, no problem. Send the certificate to us. They have another auction, and they'll sell the property. That's a tax deed sale. It's not a tax lien sale. They're going to sell the property. The highest bidder gets it. When the money comes in from the highest bidder, you get paid. So you always get paid in your tax certificate. So you get 100% return of your capital, and you get all the interest that was due to you. So that's in Florida. Now, we just ran out of time. I'm going to see you guys in the next video. But right below me, if you want to learn about tax certificates, you can learn a little bit more information. Just go ahead and subscribe.
I made $100,000 my first year.
I learned from a guy named Ted Thomas, the Pied Piper of closing.
I made 2 times my yearly salary in that 6-month period.